And you may be at this fork today. Where was hope for them? What was the next step where they would find some hope from their broken dream? I love it. At the end of the story, it says, the man spilled his soda pop in his lap, and that is it. Well, I'm here to tell you, if that were me, there would have been more than soda pop in my lap at that moment. But if I'm one, I know that there are a whole bunch of other people. The friends, you're in the middle of a broken dream, and you need to hear that this is not the end of your story, that God makes beauty out of your broken dream. You've been such kind hosts and friends. You make it really easy from my side of things to be able to come and to be a part of your church family and to participate with you in worship. And thank you for being so welcoming. I really appreciate it. If you weren't here last week, I'm Pam Sisson's younger brother. My wife Lisa and I have 7 kiddos and a grandson. We've been in ministry for 30 plus years now and invest in building relationships with pastors and church leaders and young believers to give encouragement and coaching. And once again, thank you for the absolute privilege to be with you all. Last week, we learned from Rahab the important lesson that God hits bullseyes with broken arrows. And what a comeback story that was. We don't need to be perfect for God to do something perfect in us and through us and with us. And if you missed that message and you want to refer back to it, it's on the church website, gconline.org, and I encourage you to go back there and check it out at any point in time. So last week was a comeback from brokenness. Today is a comeback from loss. So I want to invite you, turn your Bibles to Ruth chapter 1. If you have a phone or a device and you want to look it up on that, do that. Ruth chapter 1. If you're looking on your phone, you can always Google Ruth 1 and then put in NIV because that is the translation that I'm reading from this morning. And so for the sake of time, and as I've got some big stuff to download toward the end, we are going to jump in the narrative head first. So fasten your seatbelt, people. We are going to be moving through this thing really quick. And whenever I say fasten your seatbelt, it reminds me of a story that I shared a number of years ago from Michigan. This actually happened in 2008. And a guy named Benjamin Carter, he's 21, he's crippled from muscular dystrophy. He was crossing a Michigan highway in his wheelchair. And the light turned green, and his wheelchair became hooked into the front grille of a semi-truck, which took him for a 4-mile ride at 50 miles an hour down the highway until someone finally noticed and flagged the man, and they pulled over. And wouldn't you know it, Carpenter was taken to the hospital as a precaution, but he had absolutely no injuries. In fact, when the ride came to an end, he was smiling. And the Michigan State Trooper said he can be thankful he was actually secured in his wheelchair by a seatbelt. Now, if that had happened in New York and he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, the police would have ticketed him for not wearing a seatbelt. I love it. At the end of the story, it says, the man spilled his soda pop in his lap, and that is it. Well, I'm here to tell you, if that were me, there would have been more than soda pop in my lap at that moment. So, friends, fasten your seatbelt. We have a wild ride the next few moments as we get toward the end and work through the 2 lessons we have. So last week we experienced God hits bullseyes with broken arrows, and today we will share that God makes beauty out of broken dreams. God makes beauty out of broken dreams. And I already know this, people, that there's one person who needs to hear this, and it's me. But if I'm one, I know that there are a whole bunch of other people. The friends, you're in the middle of a broken dream. You've gone through broken dreams. They've been shattered. And you need to hear that this is not the end of your story, that God makes beauty out of your broken dreams. So let's jump into the story together. Ruth chapter 1, 1 through 5. It'll be up on the screen. Look on your text with us. And here's how the whole account begins. It says, in the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. And so a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech. His wife's name was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah. And they went to Moab and lived there. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah, the other named Ruth, and after they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and without her husband. So I don't need to tell you or explain to you anymore this morning. This was a major broken dream. And in our family context, I know every family has dreams. The grandparents have dreams, the parents have dreams, the children have dreams. Well, in this family context, all of them were gone. And it started initially with famine striking Israel, and Elimelech took Naomi and the 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, and they made a personal decision, one that made a lot of sense logically. Things aren't happening in Israel and Judah with the famine. We need to go to some place where there's more provision, where there's more opportunities, where we could be better off financially. And it wasn't long into their time, Elimelech died, the 2 boys kind of took over, and then they took 2 wives, now Moabitess women that were not believers. They were steeped in the religion of the Moabites, and after 10 years, those 2 sons died. Orpah and Ruth's husbands died, leaving all 3 women as widows. And then add to that infertility. Both Ruth and Orpah, they had no hope of someone to carry on the family name, no hope of someone to provide financially, no hope to care for them in their older years. They had absolutely nothing in Moab to fall back on. So here's what happened. Ruth took a step of faith. We're going to see 2 steps that she took. So Ruth first takes a step of faith. And so in Ruth 1:15-18, Orpah and Ruth came to Naomi and said, hey, we want to stay with you. And eventually Orpah decided, I'm going to go back to Moab. I'm going to go back to my people and my gods. This is what Naomi said to Ruth. Look, said Naomi, your sister-in-law, Orpah, is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her. But Ruth replied, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Can you hear the step of faith? It was a big step of faith. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you from me. And when Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. Here's the ultimate fork in the road. And you may be at this fork today. Where was hope for them? What was the next step where they would find some hope from their broken dream? And so Naomi's advice made sense. What Orpah did made sense. Go home. Go back. You're familiar with Moab. It's your religion. It's your people. Your best chance for a man is there. Your best chance for provision is there. Your best chance for children are there. Go back to Moab. It makes sense. Well, you want to know what doesn't make sense? What doesn't make sense was what Ruth did, the step of faith. So if you're ever putting together a list of, how to get your life together, it probably doesn't make sense to move to a foreign country where no one knows you. It doesn't make sense, what we're going to see in a moment, to go out into a field and pick up scraps for your sustenance. And it definitely doesn't make sense to just hang out with your mother-in-law. Are we on the same page with this, people? Sometimes my mother-in-law watches these messages. So I'm going to cut what I'm going to say next and move on in the message. And that's going to save us about 10 minutes here this morning. Orpah made the logical, outcome-based decision. I want provision, I want a man, I want children. She made the most logical, outcome-based decision to stay back with her people and her gods. Ruth made a faith decision. So friend, put a mental bookmark right here. We're going to come back to this at the very end. The fork in the road for Orpah and Ruth made all the difference in the world.